Today on the deep dive, we are looking at the just the incredible and devastatingly short career of an adult film icon who really defined the early 1990s, Shannon Michelle Wilsey, who the world knew as Savannah.
Her story is this high-speed collision. You have massive, instant celebrity on one side, and then just profound personal volatility on the other.
And the timeline is what's so shocking.
It is. Savannah was only active for about 4 years, from 1990 to 1994. But in that time, she starred in well over 100 films.
100 films. I mean, that output alone, it just shows you the nonstop professional demand she was under.
It's a relentless pace. And it's why that cultural echo lasted long after she was gone.
Right.
Absolutely. She wasn't just another performer. She was a genuine superstar. I mean, to give you some context, she was posthumously inducted into the AVN Hall of Fame in 1996.
And for anyone listening who might not know, AVN is adult video news. It's basically the industry's trade publication, kind of like their Variety.
Exactly. And later, they even ranked her at number 19 on their list of the top 50 porn stars of all time.
So that really cements her place. A true legend in that world. You know, it's also kind of fascinating where her name came from, Savannah. She apparently took it from that 1982 movie, Savannah Smiles. It just feels like this, I don't know, this strangely innocent footnote to a very uninnocent career.
And that's the core tension we're diving into today. You have the Savannah persona, explosive, highly paid, and then you have Shannon Wilsey.
The vulnerable woman behind it all.
Exactly. Our mission here is to move past the simple biography and really synthesize the intense professional and personal pressures that defined her fame and ultimately led to her tragic death. She's just 23 years old.
Okay, so let's unpack where that tension started. Shannon Michelle Wilsey was born in Laguna Beach, California in 1970, and her home life was fragmented really early on.
Yeah, her parents divorced when she was just 2. She kind of bounced around between relatives for a while, lived with her mother in Texas, but she mostly grew up with her grandparents in Mission Viejo, California.
So on the surface, it's this classic Southern California story. She was a high school cheerleader, seemed popular, vibrant.
Right. But the reality underneath that was much darker. And it gives us some really crucial context for the chaos that came later.
The shadows were there early.
They were. Wilsey later told her manager, Nancy Pera, that she'd been sexually abused as a child. And what's more, she said she first found erotic material when she was only 11. Just, snooping through her parents' things.
So these early experiences are shaping this really complicated relationship with her own sexuality long before she enters the industry.
A lot of early trauma to carry into a business that is, by its very nature, focused on performance and physical image.
So how did she make that professional leap?
She was introduced to the business by an actor and director named Rex Cabo. And she started, like a lot of people do, with photo spreads. High-profile ones for magazines like Sherry Hustler, Penthouse.
And from there, she moved into film pretty quickly.
Very quickly. But it's worth remembering that she also made this early attempt to break into mainstream B-movies using her real name.
Shannon Wilsey.
Right. She had small roles in horror films, sci-fi stuff, like The Invisible Maniac in 1990 and Camp Fear in 1991.
Which suggests she had ambitions beyond the adult industry, or at least understood that kind of fame could be fleeting?
Could be. But ultimately, the adult market is where her celebrity just exploded.
And that explosion was really formalized in 1991 when she signed an exclusive contract with Vivid Entertainment. That made her one of the very first Vivid girls.
And that was everything. Being a Vivid girl meant security. It meant top-tier production value, guaranteed distribution. It took her from being a successful freelancer to being really a brand ambassador.
The face of the company.
The face of the company. They promoted her heavily. This is how she landed lead roles, like in that award-winning series On Trial, which was actually this complex story exploring obscenity laws.
So she was at the absolute top of the game, getting critical acclaim and also a huge financial reward. We're talking a high six-figure income.
A truly massive amount of money for an adult star in the early 90s, especially when you adjust for the economy back then.
And yet this is exactly where the story pivots. It just turns towards disaster because she was plagued by severe financial troubles.
That paradox is so critical to understanding her. I mean, it raises the question, why wasn't that money protected?
Right.
Savannah had no real financial infrastructure. Performers then, and often now, operate as independent contractors. So they get these huge, immediate payouts, but they're also responsible for massive self-employment taxes.
So she has all this cash on hand, but no one to help her manage the long-term burdens like taxes.
Exactly. And her personal life was spiraling. The sources all point to these intensely lavish spending habits, which were being fueled by her drug use.
What was she spending it on?
Designer clothes, original art, expensive gifts for friends. The money was going out just as fast as it was coming in. And pretty soon, she owed a substantial amount to the IRS. The income was huge, but the foundation was just crumbling.
And that instability, it starts to compromise the asset. Her
Yeah.
professional reputation starts to erode.
It did. Despite being very professional at first, she started developing this reputation as a diva. She was consistently late to sets. She was struggling with her lines.
Showing up under the influence.
Yeah, frequently. Showing up drunk or on drugs. And for a big production company like Vivid, that kind of behavior, it hits the bottom line. Hard.
So when the reliability wasn't there anymore, the company cut ties.
Precisely. Vivid severed its exclusive contract with her, probably around 1992 or 93. And that was a massive downgrade for her, professionally and financially.
She goes from being this exclusive, highly paid star to, what, freelancing for lower budget companies?
Yes, and that was a seismic shift. She went from guaranteed premium contracts to basically having to hunt for gigs. Lower budget sets often mean less structure, lower pay.
Harsher working conditions, probably.
Potentially. And the amount she earned per film dropped substantially. It forced her to take on secondary jobs like club dancing just to try and manage her debts. And the financial pressure was just crushing her.
And if the professional world was in chaos, her personal life was mirroring that instability. Her romantic history was, what was notorious.
It was headline making, and she was very open about it. She once told Adult Video News, and this is a direct quote, "I love sex, and I love sex with rockers more than anything else."
And she backed that statement up. The list of celebrities she was linked with is like a 90s rock almanac.
It really is. You've got Billy Idol, Vince Neil from Mötley Crüe, David Lee Roth, bassist Billy Sheehan.
Pauly Shore, the comedian, Slash from Guns N' Roses, Mark Wahlberg. It's an incredible list.
And the sheer number of these high-visibility partners, it really suggests this ongoing quest for external validation, maybe trying to fill some internal void with fame and excitement.
But amidst all those celebrity flings, she also had one really profound long-term relationship.
Right, with fellow actress Jana Fine.
And that was her emotional anchor, even if it was unstable.
It was. Wilsey claims she had fallen deeply in love with Fine. And Fine later reflected on it, describing their time together as an ongoing, on-again, off-again, volatile, loving relationship.
Volatile seems to be the key word there.
It does. And you can feel the pain in Fine's reflection. Years later, she said she felt she left her behind when she needed me most.
Wow. That quote really drives home the private reality hidden underneath that public persona, doesn't it?
It does. It's the moment where the Savannah persona, confident, sexual, untouchable, it just completely breaks down.
And her manager, Nancy P.A.W, maybe gave the clearest picture of that. She described Shannon Wilsey as a vulnerable and lonely young woman who never truly felt beautiful.
Think about that, just for a second.
Yeah.
Think about that contradiction. Her entire career, her fame, her financial value, it was all based on a physical image that she herself didn't believe in.
An image she didn't feel any ownership over.
None. And that extreme emotional vulnerability, it made the final professional crisis completely devastating for her.
Which brings us to the final tragic hours on July 11th, 1994. The events of that night were the catalyst.
She was driving her Corvette that evening and got into a pretty serious car accident. She broke her nose, had significant facial injuries.
And at this point, she was relying on club dancing gigs to make ends meet.
Exactly. Jobs where her physical appearance was everything. The possibility of permanent scarring, it meant the loss of her main source of income. It threatened to plunge her even deeper into debt.
So that injury didn't just break her nose, it broke her livelihood. The product was damaged.
That's it. So after she's treated at the hospital, she goes home to her apartment in Universal City. She asks a friend to walk her dog, and then she makes this distress call to her manager, Nancy P.A.W.
And then?
Shortly after that call, she committed suicide by firearm in her garage. P.A.W., who was on her way over, was the one who found her.
And she didn't die immediately, which just prolongs the tragedy for everyone involved.
No, she died hours later at St. Joseph's Hospital in Burbank. The sources say it was her father who had to make that agonizing decision to remove her from life support after the doctors confirmed survival was impossible.
It's really poignant when you see who was there for her at the very end, especially considering that long list of celebrity connections.
It really is. Pauly Shore, her ex-boyfriend, was actually with her in the hospital when she passed away.
And he was the only one of her celebrity exes who went to her funeral 2 days later.
The only one. And he spoke so heartbreakingly about her mental state. He offered this really profound insight into her loss of identity. He said, she became Savannah. She became her character who was into drugs and needed reassurance all the time. She forgot who Shannon was.
Wow.
Then he added, I knew she wanted out of the porn business.
The character just consumed the person completely, and her death sent this huge shockwave through the industry, especially coming after the suicides of other stars like Shauna Grant and Megan Lee.
Yes, that string of tragedies demanded some kind of institutional response. And that response is a major part of Savannah's legacy, one that goes beyond her films.
What happened?
After she died, an industry figure named Bill Margold founded Protecting Adult Welfare, or P.A.W. It was a nonprofit specifically dedicated to providing counseling, financial education, and general support for performers.
Something that just didn't exist for Savannah.
Not in a formal, reliable way.
Oh.
P.A.W. is a direct result of the systemic needs that Savannah's life and death highlighted so tragically.
And beyond the industry, she's still this significant cultural touchstone of the 90s.
Oh, absolutely. Her story was profiled in major documentaries like Playboy, The Story of X, and a dedicated True Hollywood story. There are songs about her, like Savannah Smiles by Okkervil River, and she was the subject of a poem in Amber Tamlin's book, Dark Sparkler.
The intensity of her rise just earned her that lasting fame. OC Weekly called her arguably the first superstar porn goddess of the 1990s. So, after all this, what does this deep dive into Savannah's short life really mean for us? I mean, her story is this high-contrast cautionary tale. It shows the psychological and financial costs of instant fame in an unregulated space, especially when the persona just completely obliterates the person underneath.
I think if you look at the whole arc, you see this devastating cycle, from the huge income that vanished because there was no financial structure, to her manager saying she never felt beautiful while her fame was based entirely on her looks, and then it culminates in the founding of P.A.W. This deep dive into Shannon Wilsey reveals the systemic pressures placed on people whose physical image is their central product, their only source of wealth, often without any safety nets.
Right.
And that raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider. How much structural responsibility does an industry have for the long-term well-being of its most valuable and yet its most vulnerable assets? That, I think, is the legacy of Savannah that continues to resonate today.